Our guys are fighting well and successfully along the entire front line.
You didn't let the enemy break through. You're strong warriors.
More help is on the way.
We're rushing ammunition, armored vehicles, missiles, air defenses.
The unfortunate delay in delivering weapons had a significant impact on the front.
It's too early to draw conclusions, but the situation is under control.
To our viewers watching on PBS in the United States and to all of you around the world, welcome. We begin the day with a change in plans. In an effort to sustain international support for his country's battle against Russia, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy had planned to visit Spain and Portugal this week. Instead, he spent the day in the city of Kharkiv, visiting wounded soldiers and meeting military commanders. Ukrainian forces have been locked in bitter fighting against Russian troops northeast of Kharkiv since the launch of a surprise offensive last week. Ukraine says the situation on the front line has been largely secured, but Russian troops have seized a few kilometers of territory on the Ukrainian side of the border. DW's Max Zander has been to Vovchansk, the largest city currently in the focus of this latest Russian assault.
For the people of Vovchansk, this is a nightmare repeating itself. The Russians attacked and occupied the town at the start of the full-scale invasion, but were pushed out. Now, they're back.
And this here is what the situation in Vovchansk is turning into at the very moment. Behind me here, this is a residential building. It was struck by a glide bomb, from what we've been told, just about 20 minutes ago.
2 women were injured and taken to hospital. Russian forces are hitting the city and neighboring areas with aerial bombs like this one. When we were there, Russians had entered the northern suburbs. These dragon teeth are supposed to slow advancing tanks, and the Ukrainians are rushing more troops to the region to prevent a Russian breakthrough. But it's looking so grim that most people have left, and many of those who've remained so far are now following them. Police officers Vlad and Yuri are here to get some of them out. Volodymyr lives with his dog Miron right next to the new front line, but doesn't want to leave. Vlad leans on a professional connection to persuade him.
Listen to me, I'm the commander of your daughter. I don't want her to sit there and cry over you. Okay, I'll go now.
Many don't want to believe this is happening again.
Why didn't you evacuate earlier?
I had hoped that all would be good, that nobody would force me out.
Just as we're leaving,
Lie down. There are glide bombs coming.
Baron, I promise you, you come with me.
this second large-scale attack is devastating for people here, Officer Vlad tells us.
They're all in despair because everything they have gathered in their lives, bit by bit, and built, their houses, arranged their places for living, everything they had, they lost. Their most cherished desire now is for it all to end, and they want to return to those ruins that will remain and restore everything.
The danger cannot be underestimated. This was a sniper round aimed at the head of their driver. Their luck, this vehicle, provided by the Americans, was armored. Further south, in relative safety, some of the last evacuees wait for transport to Kharkiv. Dasha is here with her family and their neighbors. They spent 6 days in the basement and then fled on foot.
We didn't think anything would happen. And when we realized that everything was flying from all sides, everything was being bombed, we all hoped that this is my house. We couldn't take out my shepherd dog. Unfortunately, I left him.
Sorry.
We are all alive. Thank God the whole family left.
Alive and with loved ones. Volodymyr is also safe, reunited with his daughter. But he and his dog Miron are not home here. And Volodymyr has lost faith they'll ever return.
Well, for more now, I'm joined by Marina Miron. She's from the War Studies Department at King's College London, a familiar face to our viewers. It's good to see you, Marina. You know, we've just seen that report there from Vovchansk. Will Ukraine be able to hold this city?
Good evening, Brent. Well, the situation is very difficult for the Ukrainian forces, but what we have to understand is that Vovchansk is divided by Seversky Donets River, so it gives the Ukrainian forces a protective barrier. From my understanding, the town is now divided in two parts, and the Russians are controlling the northern part, and they will have to cross the river in order to be able to capture Vovchansk in its entirety, which I think is the idea behind this offensive. However, I don't foresee it to be happening very quickly, or at least not as quickly as we have seen the advances around Vovchansk.
Ukraine says that it has stabilized the situation across the front near Kharkiv. Is that what you are seeing and hearing?
Well, from what it looks, it seems to be more stable than a couple of days ago, but that doesn't mean that the Russians have stopped or that their offensive operation in that direction has run out of steam yet. So we have to wait a couple of more days to see what is going to happen specifically, because I think that they will be also pushing along other directions, and possibly if and when that offensive runs out of steam, I think that the Russians might try to go for Sumy or even Chernihiv.
Russia has not advanced that deeply, but it has seized some territory. I mean, is Ukraine going to be in any position to retake that anytime soon? And I just want to ask you about the knock-on effects for Ukraine. Russia says that it has recaptured the town of Robotyne on the southern front. I mean, that's basically the territory that Ukraine captured during its offensive last year. So is the situation there, is it clear? And I mean, is it to be expected given how stretched Ukrainian forces are?
Well, that's the whole idea, I think, behind this Kharkiv offensive, is to stretch the Ukrainian forces and to stretch them even more. And in my previous reply, I said they might attack Sumy and Chernihiv in order to keep the Ukrainian forces stretched. And with the Ukrainian having issues with their manpower, having issues in terms of military equipment, even as the U.S. aid is arriving in Ukraine, it is going to be difficult. And I don't see any strategic purpose in trying to recapture the northern territories just yet, because I think it would be the wrong place for the Ukrainian forces to concentrate their efforts on. And to come back to Zaporizhia, essentially the Russian Ministry of Defense declared Robotyne as liberated from Ukrainian forces. From us end, it looks like the Ukrainian forces are still present in one part of the settlement. However, I think in the information spectrum, it is a psychological blow to the Ukrainian forces, because essentially taking Robotyne would negate all the effects of the counteroffensive, which didn't go according to the plan. So I think also from this perspective, the Ukrainian forces are finding themselves in a difficult position.
So if it's true to say that Russia is currently on the front foot in this war, how close is Ukraine to suffering a serious defeat?
Well, what would that defeat look like is a question, or how far is Russia going to go? And I think that this will depend on many factors, not least on the outside support to Ukraine. There have been suggestions, for instance, to use NATO's air defenses stationed in Poland and Romania to free up some air defenses inside Ukraine to basically help Ukraine in that way, because air defenses systems are scarce. Also, it depends on ammunitions, but most importantly, I think, is the human factor and the fact that Ukraine is trying to mobilize troops but is failing to fill file and rank to send to the front lines. And the polarization that is taking place inside Ukrainian society and the problems in the military command and political problems also Zelenskyy is facing right now, they will all determine how and when and if Ukraine can be defeated on the battlefield. But that doesn't mean that Ukraine will lose politically just yet. So it remains to be seen, but I foresee that the combination of these factors will determine the fate of Ukraine until probably November 24, until the U.S. presidential elections.
Well, you know, Ukraine can always say that one reason that it may be vulnerable now is because the U.S. had a delay in delivering weapons, the delay that we've seen in the last few months. But it can't blame anyone else when it's talking about not having enough soldiers, right? This new mobilization law that's been passed, this effort to get more soldiers into the military. I mean, do you think that should have been done a year ago? Are they doing this too late?
Well, I think it's not fair to put the blame on the U.S., just because, as I said, there are so many factors at play here, and technology is not going to fill the manpower gap. Technology is also not going to boost the morale. Well, to a certain extent it might, but it's not going to make such a great effect. And if we look at the war in Afghanistan, the U.S. was technologically superior to the Taliban, just to make a point that technology is not everything in war. And the mobilization is always a very unpopular choice. And at the very beginning, there were a lot of volunteers to join the Ukrainian armed forces. Right now, the situation is looking bad. So I'm not sure if starting earlier to mobilize people would have helped the overall effort. And we also have to remember that Ukraine has special forces deployed to Sudan to counteract Russian activities there. So I'm wondering, maybe the Ukrainian command should start redeploying those forces, because they are very capable and they could be a great help right now in Ukraine. And of course, we have to understand that mobilizing people means they need to be trained, they need to be outfitted, they need to be paid. So this is affecting Ukrainian economy, because who is going to pay the taxes to finance all of this? So the economic situation of Ukraine is also an important factor in the capability to mobilize people.
Marina Miron from King's College. As always, Marina, we appreciate your time and your analysis tonight. Thank you.